Good evening, and welcome to the second installment of Faith in Focus, a forum for bishops' candidates. It is with great joy and anticipation that we extend our heartfelt greetings to each of you as you gather here to discern and share the vision of those who are offering themselves for the future of our A.M.E. Zion Church. This forum shares as a space for us to come together as a community, united in our commitment to the mission and ministry of the A.M.E. Zion Church. Your presence here reflects dedication to serving God and his people, and we are honored to journey alongside them in this important endeavor. We extend our deepest gratitude to each candidate for their willingness to serve and participate tonight. May this time in this forum be blessed with fruitful discussions, mutual encouragement, and a renewed sense of purpose. Once again, welcome to Faith in Focus, a Candace Forum. May our time together be a reflection of God's grace and a testament to the power of faithful leadership. I will now turn it over to our moderator, the doctor, I was about to say the Reverend, Dr. Zalex Rivera, who serves as the first vice chair for ACE.
Good evening. I should unmute myself. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Katrina, for that introduction. And I want to say hello and good evening to everybody who has joined us. I'm very honored and humbled to be the moderator for this evening as we go ahead and have a very real and detailed conversation with the candidates. I want to take a moment to introduce them. We will have them come on screen and introduce themselves, where they're from, what area they represent, as well as give a brief introduction, as well as I want to actually say the rules before. I actually want to say the rules before I start introducing people. So I do want to break down how this in fact will go. So each candidate will be allotted a certain amount of time to answer each question. So I will pose a question to candidate one, who will have 2 minutes to respond. Following that, the next candidate will also have 2 minutes to respond. But after the first candidate responds after 2 minutes, every candidate only gets 90 minutes to answer that same question. I hope I didn't lose you there in the breakdown of the rules. At this time, I want to introduce the first candidate who will come on screen to introduce themselves, which is Reverend Keith I. Harris.
Good evening, Zion. Good evening to the Young Adult Steering Committee. God bless you and thank you for doing ministry, continuing to do ministry. And I use the word continuing because I once served on the Young Adult Steering Committee some years ago. And I just want to congratulate you on the ministry that you are doing. As you know, my name is Keith I. Harris. I am the presiding elder of the Loving Long Island District from the Mother Conference, the New York Annual Conference. I am here to present to you my campaign to be elected your next bishop in the A.M.E. Zion Church. I have a simple yet powerful mantra. It simply says, aim high with Harris. What do I mean by aim high? I just want to break down the word AIM, or the acronym AIM, if you will. First and foremost, accountability. ACE for accountability. Accountability is the foundation of effective leadership. I can assure you that I vow to be transparent and answerable to each and every one of you, and I will be accountable for all of my actions. Secondly, I is for integrity. Integrity is a non-negotiable aspect of leadership with unwavering honesty and principles and ethical conduct. All of us must have. If we are going to witness for Christ and win the world for Christ, we must have integrity, use integrity, operate in integrity. And lastly, M is for ministry focus. Ministry must be at the forefront of our leadership. The heart of our church lies in the ministry that we do. And we must understand that ministry is not just standing in the pulpit on Sunday morning. Ministry is more than the pastoral ministry. My children remind me that ministry does not have to be hard, long, and boring, but ministry can be relevant and fun. Our discipline talks about various types of ministry, chaplain ministry, prison ministry, women's ministry, men's ministry. There are several different types of ministry. And I submit that it would help the A.M.E. Zion Church if we invest in ministry, put ministry as our focus. I come as relatable, compassionate, and deeply concerned about the trajectory of our church. Remember, Keith I. Harris for Bishop 2024.
Thank you so much, Reverend Harris, for that. I now want to take a moment to introduce our next candidate, the Reverend Dr. Charene Mapson.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to tell you a little bit about me. And then when we come back for our closing remarks, I'll tell you about my campaign platform, if you don't mind. I was sitting here reminiscing about when I was a young adult, because I'm no longer in the young adult age category. I know I look like it, but I'm not. But I used to serve as a YACM director for our district years ago when we were on the Wilson district years ago. And I was also a young adult missionary society coordinator for the local church, St. Luke, several years ago. So what I want to say is I faced some very real young adult issues years ago, and I'm pretty sure some of us have or will be or are facing them now. I think about when I moved from Atlanta. I'm a native of Atlanta, Georgia. I moved from Atlanta to Wilmington to take a job in corporate America after I received my STEM degree, chemistry degree from Clark Atlanta University with a minor in engineering. When I served 6 years in corporate America, they decided they were going to downsize us. About 45 of us got downsized. And so I changed careers. I started to sell real estate, and I did it reluctantly, actually, but I found out I was good at it. And so I started to sell real estate. And then while I was selling real estate, God called me into ministry. And I remember having a discussion with him. Why me and why now? And the Lord said, you never would have given up that job. And I probably wouldn't have, because it was good money. But I just wanted to give you a snapshot of who I am and where I am and why I'm coming to this in the way in which I am. I'll talk to you more later. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Reverend Mapson, Reverend Dr. Mapson. Next up, we have Reverend Eldrin Morrison.
Good evening, everyone. Delighted to be here tonight to share with the YACM Steering Committee and all of Zion in this forum. I am the Reverend Eldrin Morrison, the pastor of the Shaw Temple, A.M.E. Zion Church in Smyrna, Georgia, presiding elder of Zion's farthest work in South Korea, the South Korea Annual Conference, and I am offering myself as a candidate for bishop in the life of our church. I am delighted to be at this point in my ministry. I just can't tell you how excited I am about all the things that the Lord is doing for the A.M.E. Zion Church right now and is doing even in my life. I bring 30 years of ministry to this opportunity, 24 years of pastoral ministry. I've pastored in South Carolina, the great state of South Carolina, the great state of Connecticut, as well as I'm honored to pastor now in the Georgia Annual Conference. I am running on this platform. I am running on the healing that needs to take place in our church, both in the pulpit as well as in the pews. I'm running on the health of our church. Every congregation, whether it is in the rural, whether it's in suburban areas, whether it's in urban areas, I pastor in all three contexts. All of them ought to be healthy churches. And we've got to work very hard to make sure that every church is a healthy church. I'm also running on hope. Our denomination, Zion right now, needs a whole lot of hope. And together, if you vote for me, we'll be strength for today and we'll be bright hope for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And now I want to pass it over to Reverend Dr. Staccato Powell II.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to serve in this capacity as a candidate, the youngest candidate that is, to offer themselves as the episcopal General Conference in the year of our Lord 2024. Let me tell you, first and foremost, we like to subscribe to the acronym we know is PUSH. Not only pray until something happens, but also persevere until something happens. And the truth of the matter is, God is always up to something. He never slumbers nor sleeps. But in fact, he is still on the main line and we can tell him what we want. And I told him that I wanted to serve him wholeheartedly and go all in with him. And in order to do that, I think it is incumbent upon us to persevere on the promises that he has made unto us. First of all, the text says, he or she that perseveres in due season shall receive their crown. And as a result of that, I'm asking that you will persevere with power as we continue to serve in various capacities throughout this nation. Been afforded the opportunity to serve as advisory board to the President of the United States of America. And I think it's incumbent upon us to be at the table as opposed to being on the menu. If you're on the menu, that means you're possibly eating up. But if you have a seat at the table as intergenerational leadership, and as a young adult myself, I think that the voice will ultimately make the difference.
Thank you, Dr. Powell, for that. At this time, I want to ask all the candidates to join me on screen so we can begin our question and answer time. Please remember that we're going to go in order, right? I'm going to call the candidate's name. You have 2 minutes to answer the question. After that, the other candidates, if you choose to answer the question, will have 90 seconds to do so. Okay? Are we on the same page? All right. Our first candidate, Reverend Harris.
Yes.
When there are 2 or 3 churches in a district with 3 to 6 members struggling, how do you feel about church consolidation? If you were assigned to a district like this, what and how would you move forward with this?
Easier said than done. Close the door and consolidate them. But there are some things that you have to factor in. Having faced and facing those types of issues even right now, a church has a history. A church has a culture that might not work, consolidating them with another church, because sometimes those two cultures don't mix and it's not a happy marriage. That's not to say that consolidation cannot be done. A meeting of the minds, if they're in close proximity, that's another issue. Leadership and who takes on the responsibility of making the church work and run. Making sure that financial obligations are met is another factor. that you have to weigh in. I would sit down and look at all of those factors and perhaps have a meeting with the congregations to see if they're willing, and if they're willing, take the necessary steps to bring them together.
Thank you for that. Now the question is open to any other candidate who's willing to answer. You have 90 seconds to do so. If y'all need me to repeat the question, let me know.
Yes, please.
Awesome. Okay. So when there are 2 or 3 churches in a district with 3 to 6 members struggling, how do you feel about church consolidation? If you were assigned to this district, what and how would you do? What and how would you move forward with this? 90 seconds.
I believe we live in a post-denominational era where it is incumbent upon us to meet the needs of our churches almost by any means necessary. In fact, what we like to harp on at Fisher here in Arizona, A.M.E Zion Church, is the ability to rehabilitate those who come looking for, whether that's housing, mental health, mental wholeness, or the lack of. As a result, I believe we must be able to bring developers in who I have even on deck, who are willing to consolidate the situation and essentially pay off any debts that may be present within that district at that moment in time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Could I add this? I definitely think Dr. Powell and Presiding Elder Harris have done an awesome job answering this. I would just add to something that Presiding Elder Harris said, is that, we got to be careful that we don't just come in and try to close folks' churches just because they're 6 members and they're struggling. We got some 100 and 200 member churches that have been struggling a long time as well. And people have to vote on the closure of their congregation. So we got to be careful with that. But what we can do is plant the seed. Plant a seed, start a conversation about church merger and about where there are opportunities to grow our conferences. I know several bishops that are doing that right now. One, Bishop Leak, and I just talked about that in Kentucky, about how there are some mergers that can take place within conference boundaries that we've got to plant a seed, and we may not be there to see it through, but the next administration or maybe 2 administrations from now, we'll see that work come to fruition.
Good one. You talk about being tacked up. Okay. Dr. Mapson, you want to take it or you want to move on?
Well, I was just going to say, I echo what Reverend Morrison and Presiding Elder Harris have said, because I've actually seen it in our area. We've had to broach the subject very cautiously, and then it took time, but over time, we eventually actually sold the church, to be honest with you, because there was no active congregation anymore. And it went smoothly because the actual process was broached very carefully and cautiously and deliberately. So it can be done. And I'll say this, I'll add this one thing. I don't know, quickly. Before I was a pastor, before I was a minister, before I was called as a layperson, I even said, why do we have 4 or 5 churches with 2 or 3 people in them? And the answer that came to me was, these are family churches. And so that's why we have to be really cautious.
Well, thank you for that, because you actually kind of pivoted us to our next question, which happens to be for you, Dr. Mapson, and then we can pass it on to everybody, right? So name the biggest issue in Zion. Ooh, that's a tough one. Name the biggest issue in Zion. What unpopular stance are you willing to take that will address that said issue?
Okay, 2 minutes, right? So let's see. I think we need to, thank you for putting that up on the screen. Yeah. Let me just say, let me do the second part first. to address things that are unpopular. We do it right now as pastors. Let me say, I do it right now as a pastor. I'm not going to speak for everybody on the line, but there are some unpopular issues that I have to attack as a pastor, and I just have to do them. I have to take them on head on. And now to talk about the biggest issue in Zion, that's a big question. If you're talking about from a financial standpoint, well, okay, I'll tell you what, let me just go right here. It's getting people back to where we used to be. Everybody thinks that after the pandemic, after the quarantine, we'll go back to business as usual. In actuality, we are not. We just have to make sure that we embrace what we learned when we're in the quarantine, use those lessons, take those lessons to the next level so that we can take our churches to the next level, so that we can take the denomination to the next level. So we have to hold on to some of the stuff that we learned and implement some things that are new. And that's basically what I've said in my own platform. I've not abandoned what I learned during the pandemic, but I've taken it to the next level. For example, quickly, we have some older people in my congregation who never came out in the dark when we had Bible study, even before we were quarantined. So when we went to Bible study online, we just kept it there because they're not going to come out in the dark anyway. So we just have to apply logic to some of this stuff and move forward. I think that's my time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to take the question? 90 seconds. Who wants to go first? Y'all want me to pick you? Let's go. Okay, come on. Let's do it.
For me, I think if we're honest, our declining membership. And what I would do to attack that issue would be to invest in intentional evangelism. As a bishop, I would require that our pastors and supernumerary ministers do evangelism, report of their labors, and be intentional about reaching souls for Christ. In addition to that, if the church invests in various ministries, as I said earlier, if we invest in various ministries, we can reach people from different perspectives and bring them into the fold. Hence, church growth.
No, I
Thank
think
you for that.
I'll just add that I believe that there are a lot of symptoms that we keep talking about of the larger problem. From my perspective, the largest problem we have is that of leadership, integrous leadership, both lay as well as clergy. The old saying is true: an army of sheep led by a lion will always be defeated by an army of lions led by a sheep. We need strong leaders, those kind of leaders that are not only can grow churches, those kind of leaders that are not afraid to deal with unpopular stances and to dig deep in the doctrine of our church and push that forward and do the work of evangelism and outreach and economic development, all those things. We need leaders that can do this and are doing it already. And I believe that if we look at persons in whom we appoint, persons in whom we vote for and elect, we've got to start looking for leaders, those who have been proven leaders, wherever context they're in.
And Dr. Powell?
Yes, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Name the biggest issue in Zion. What unpopular stance are you willing to take that will address that issue?
Yes. Essentially, I think the biggest issue in Zion is the itineracy of our preachers and our pastors, the ability to gauge pastor is himself and his family, and then determine whether or not they should remain, is something that needs to be gauged from a perspective that's conducive to everyone's circumstance.
All right, thank you for that. All right, I'm moving on to Reverend Morrison. This question is for you. In the United States, decreases in size. Would you support reducing the connectional budget to make it easier on the remaining churches?
I serve on the Connectional Budget Board, have served there for a couple quadrenniums, and I deal with this all the time in terms of the budget itself and looking at the budget. I don't know that we are right now where we need to decrease the budget, because our budget has not grown in over about 20 years, really. What we do need to, in the A.M.E. Zion Church, we need to look for additional streams of income. And we do not have to look very far. We've got plenty of properties that really we have not been great trustees nor stewards over, that really could create the streams of revenue that the A.M.E. Zion Church really does need. If you've got to have more than one stream of income to survive as a single person or family, certainly our churches have multiple streams of income. Then the denomination's got to look for additional ways other than connectional claims to fund the ministries of our church. So I'm not so much about reducing our overall connectional budget, because we're really doing the miraculous, because it has not been increased in years. But I do think we need to move with some dispatch in finding additional streams of income.
Thank you for that. Who wants to take it for 90 seconds? Come on, Dr. Powell. Let's see if you have a. Well, they took it off the screen for you. But
I was reading the question on the screen.
Here we go.
You support decreasing. Well, I said this once, I said it again. It's possible to be able to decrease the connectional budget, but it's possible in other means and ways other than just eradicating the thing altogether. One thing we could do is utilize the space. Once again, I echo the sentiments of Elder Reverend Morrison. Utilize the space that we own and expound upon that. Like I said in my beginning statement, I have developers that are willing to come in and actually purchase. Are we still on? Can you hear me still?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I didn't see.
We only have 30 seconds. Okay. We'll come right back to you for time restraints. Let's pass it on. Reverend Harris, you want to take a stab at it?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know that I would agree with decreasing the budget. A decreased budget means a decreased ministry. An increased budget means we're increasing ministry. We ought to be doing more ministry. Yes, it is hard for us to support the church on general claims alone, and that we need to look at. I agree with Dr. Morrison that we need to look at other avenues for income and supporting our ministries. And we ought to have a strategic team, a committee, a board, whatever you want to call it, that will look at various avenues, share the risk that these avenues, because everything is a risk, and weigh these options out. But I don't think we should decrease, because we need to increase our ministry. And I think we should increasing our budget would increase our ministry.
All right, Dr. Mapson, what are your thoughts?
I was going to say, I was sitting here thinking about the last quadrennial convention, and when Reverend Morrison mentioned the CBB, And to my surprise, we didn't have an increase at that last conference. I hope you remember that. Mm-hmm. And so I sat there and I thought, this is really good, and we were able to do a lot with what we had. And I think if we're able to continue in that vein, then we should continue with that. But also, I do believe that he has a valid point about additional income streams, because to keep it where we have it and then provide additional income streams without tapping our membership, that's the way I think to go.
Thank you for that. And I just want to segue a little bit to add a point of question. We can do this in like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. We're giving ideas right now, and I'll start with you, Reverend Morrison. The idea is to tell churches to, and Reverend Harris, to increase ministry by increasing streams of income. But how do we do that? Like, what would be, if you was elected a bishop, how would you get them to do that? What kind of strategy or systems would you put in for the local church to be able to follow to make that more attainable?
I think we have to lead by example. Just looking back at places I pastored, both in New Haven, especially in New Haven and in Georgia here, making sure that education is a ministry of our church. That has increased both revenue as well as persons in our congregation. So that becomes an evangelistic tool itself. So we've got so many churches that have all kind of space that sits dormant all week long, except being used on Sunday. We can start after-school programs, daycares, all those things that become streams of revenue into our church. It takes some time to develop those things, but I think an annual conference or a district can give churches those tools and resources to get that done.
Okay. And Reverend Harris?
Yes. I'm going to go back to my pastorate in California, Oakland, California, where we invested in property. We put our nickels and dimes together, and we invested in houses in Oakland. And those investments brought income into the church. As a matter of fact, Greater Cooper Church is being sustained even today through some of the investments that were made while we were pastoring there. Another thing is we need to teach and lead our people to leave something to the church for the church when they pass away. Take out an insurance policy for your church. Open up avenues, and we need to bring in people and teach them how to do that. And we need to become trustworthy so that people will do that, so that when they die, that won't be it. The church can live on.
Thank you for that. Now, I don't know if Dr. Matthew, Dr. Powell wanted to take a stab at that before we go to the next question. The question was on how. How do we equip and empower local churches as it relates to advancing ministry and getting new streams of income?
Yes, I think Reverend Morrison, and President L. Harris hit on it a little bit as well. There have been some things that I've done in ministries in the past where, for example, we had in one of the counties where I pastored, there was a need for a Hispanic church to come. And so we developed a financial plan with them where they paid us X number of dollars per week to use the church. And they used the church until they were able to get on their feet and get their own. So that's one way. And then another one was we had gotten a grant from USDA for food, to feed kids during the summer. I said, well, why don't we just make it a program, a summer program? So we just charged them X number of dollars per week. And parents were glad to drop them off, for the week. And we just took that it was a nominal fee, but it was something, just for them to have skin in the game. And we developed a whole program around just feeding them. So instead of just giving them 2 meals a day, we just did Bible study, 4-H club. I had somebody come in from UNCW building bridges and all kinds of things. So there are ways that we can do it. And I'll go back to what I said when I was in Louisville. we have to teach, and this is Bishop Richard Keith Thompson, the late Bishop Richard Thompson's words. We have to teach for change. In other words, teach people and then change. Don't just come in there hammering it down like a bull in a china shop. So
thank you for that. Dr. Powell, any feedback on that before we move to the next question?
Yes. Well, essentially, we could do a Starbucks, or not just Starbucks, but you could have multiple streams of income coming in through affordable housing, where the rental units can be used as a source of revenue to bring in, go about and be a conduit for change. Not just affordable housing, but also you can utilize other pizza parlors. I mean, the list goes on. I think it's just incumbent upon us to put the necessary systems in place to be able to germinate those streams.
Okay, thank you for that. And the next question is for you.
Reverend? May I just add, I had a few seconds left. May I just
add
come on. My statement? If you do ministry, money will come.
Okay. All right. So now, Dr.
Money
Powell,
follows ministry. Money follows ministry.
Dr. Powell, the question is for you. To be a good leader, you must first be a good follower. If we ask your presiding elder and/or bishop, how supportive are you to their leadership? What would be their response? 2 minutes.
Well, I must say that they would say he puts his best foot forward. You're always taught to do the best that you can, and that will stand at the end of the day. Now, there's some things and some needs that can be met right away, and there's others that can't. But I believe in the line of communication being open between, as it relates to the apostolic succession, which consists of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, and then going down onto the bishop, presiding elders, as with clergy, and then the lay. But we have to acknowledge that succession. We have to acknowledge the apostolic succession and follow protocol. And that is something that I've been strengthened in doing in terms of being able to maintain some type of health as it relates to how we deal with one another.
Thank you for that. Dr. Mapson, you want to take it?
Sure. I think they will both say she is excellent at following leadership. She's a great follower.
Period.
I don't have a doubt it was anything else. And I don't need a whole 90 seconds to tell you that.
Okay, come on, Reverend Harris. What would they say?
He would probably, Bishop Dennis Vernon Proctor would probably tell you that I need some more Keith Harrises on my team to help this thing go a little further. And he will also tell you that I think outside of the box and try to do things differently and uniquely to engage and involve people in the life of our church.
Okay. And Reverend Morrison.
I talk to my presiding elder every day. In fact, he's the treasurer of my campaign, presiding elder Morton. I think if you spoke to either he or Bishop Monroe, they both tell you that Bishop Crenshaw calls Shaw Temple the flagship of South Atlantic. You're gonna be the flagship and out front. You got to lead like you're out front. And every day, every week, we at Shaw Temple, we lead like we're out front.
All right. Now I'm going to throw out a question and I'm going to just pick a person so that you're ready. Okay. So the first person I pick on gets the 2 minutes and then everybody else gets 90 seconds. Okay. You ready? Here we go. Let's go to Reverend Harris. He should have known I was coming that direction, right? He felt it. Okay. If elected the bishop, what is your plan for the young adults in Africa?
Having had the privilege and the pleasure of visiting Ghana last January, having met with some of the young adults over there, they energized me. Even just visiting them, they energized me. They have a lot on the ball. Whether Africa or US, Jamaica or Trinidad, you come to a meeting of the minds, you meet with the people, you see where they are, and you discover what their needs are, and you try to develop missions and ministries that will meet their needs. And there again, engage them in doing ministry and various missions that are profitable to them. And when I say profitable, I don't mean financially. I'm talking about spiritually profitable, morally profitable, their self-esteem, their encouragement, that kind of profitable is what I'm talking about. So it's a matter of meeting them where they are and ascertaining what their needs are and leading them to reach their goals.
All right, Dr. Powell, what plan would you have for the young adults in Africa?
Yes, well, I believe a revival will be necessary. I conducted a revival while over there, traveling through the continent, mainly Tanzania, Nairobi, Kenya, Uganda, which is the Pearl of Africa. And, also it's incumbent upon us to speak their language, which is, we know, hallelujah, because anywhere you're on the continent, where you're in Asia, Elder Morrison, you know that, or you're on the continent of India, or Africa, or even Europe, hallelujah receives the same response. And that's a yes and an amen. So if we can go over there with the praise in our lips, willing to set forth the land on fire, which they already are on fire, I think, from a numerical perspective, as well as a spiritual one. But if you can add any type of resource from an economical standpoint as well, I think it would help facilitate the process of them come along a lot better based on our ability to reach out to them through any means necessary.
Okay, Dr. Mapson, the young adults in Africa.
Excuse me. When I served as Y secretary for the Women's Home and Overseas Missionary Society, I had to reach across the water to, attach or attract myself or draw myself in with the youth across the water. So the approach that I used would be the same one that for the young adults is what I would use for the youth. And I've actually visited Africa a couple times. And what I saw in Zimbabwe when we went, because it was the first annual conference in Zimbabwe, I saw a very vibrant young adult community in Zimbabwe. And, we might think they may not have it all together, but they do. And I agree with Presiding Elder Harris in that we have to sit down and talk with them about what their needs are and what their desires are. And I've always said this, I said this even when I was working with the youth. I never try to go in and try to make somebody who I think they should be. Meet them, as President Elder Harris said, meet them where they are, and then take them to where they need to be. A single parent with 5 kids doesn't need you to judge her about whether or not she fed her kids or did their hair. She needs you to help her kids and do their hair. And then she'll hear what you have to say, no matter what continent she lives on.
Okay. All right. Reverend Morrison, you want to take a stab at it?
Sure. Much of our work in Africa has leadership already that is indigenous. So I would think if I am elected a bishop, I would want to partner and support the leadership that's already there. Having visited there, I have seen the energy. Elder Harris is right. They really energize you. Serving in South Korea, I have some Liberians that are there. They are, just some of the hardest and most dedicated people in the A.M.E. Zion Church. So I would, honestly, I'd want to support the leadership that's already there. I'd like to offer my platform of health, healing, and hope. I'd like to advocate from wherever I am that other nations would stop taking the resources from Africa and allow them to develop in the countries that they're in. I think our best thing is to be an advocate and to support the leadership that's already there.
Thank you for that. One of the core values of the Young Adults and Christian Ministries from inception is mentorship, right? They are the bridging gap between the quote unquote Assembly for Christian Educators, the over 40. That's the generation I came up in. They were over 40 to everybody now, right? But they're supposed to be bridging the gap and have this level of mentorship, which is one of their core values, right? So I want to ask, and I'll start with Dr. Powell. Do you currently mentor someone? If so, what has went really good and what has not worked so well?
Yes. First of all, I believe in the power of mentorship in a major way. In fact, before we got on this call, I was on a conference call with 100 Black men here in Phoenix, where I serve on the committee for the health and wellness component. And we discussed various ways to mentor our Men of Tomorrow Academy, because we believe that they'll be what they see. And as a mentor, that's what I do. I try to mentor another mentee by just showing them the way, by doing the way, and that is Jesus. But in any event, just so that I'm making sure I'm addressing the question properly, I want to say that not only can you show them the way, but through mentorship, I think we all had mentors of our own that showed us the way, and it's incumbent upon us to do the same for future generations to come in order to pass the baton appropriately.
Okay. Dr. Mapson.
Sure.
Do you currently mentor someone? If so, what went really good and what did not work so well?
Yeah. So I said earlier that I was Vice Secretary of the Missionary Society. That was from 2003 to 2011. Okay. Do the math. Fast forward to 2024. I am still called by some of those folks that I worked with when I was Vice Secretary. Now, most recently, one of those is a male, and I've been mentoring him. And what has gone well is the fact that he'll listen to me 90% of the time. And then 10% of the time he goes off. And I have to remind him, you can't call people old. You have to make sure you respect everybody. So, that kind of thing. So, this whole language that we have to deal with, but what has gone well is the fact that we've been able to communicate with one another. I've been able to teach him some things and he's been able to keep me hip. And but every now and then he goes off the rails, but 90% of the time.
That's fine. Don't worry. As long as you bring them back, right? You got to bring them back over. Okay. All right. Reverend Harris.
Yes, I have some persons who I currently mentor, whether they recognize me as their mentor or not. There are some young people that the Lord put in my life for that purpose, and I'm going to give them all that I have to direct them in the way that is right. They don't always listen to me. Some of them are my flesh and blood, but I'm going to give them what I know is right. And not only do I have young people that I mentor, there are some people older than I am who are new in ministry they're looking for direction and purpose. And I try to pour into them what was poured into me. It's not necessarily an age thing, but it's about pouring into the lives of people and sitting back and watching the fruit grow.
Absolutely. Reverend Morrison. Sorry to cut you off.
That's all right. I'm not sure about what went wrong along the way. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, Reverend Morrison.
The mentorship is so very important to all of us. I'm sure all of us on this call tonight, everyone who's in leadership, you didn't make yourself. You were mentored in ministry, mentored in leadership from someone else. And what we get, we ought to give. And so, yes, I'm a mentor. I don't know if Elder Harris has this problem, but I have the hardest problem trying to find ministers and pastors who want to go to South Korea. So I've had to mentor some young adults, even in South Korea. I'm mentoring one now, whom I think will take over a church very soon. So I think it's so very important, and it's a ministry that every leader ought to have. What goes wrong is that when you start doing the work for people, when you do the work for them, you have to continue doing it. So I've learned that the hard way. So you really do have to push people that you're.
Okay. Now, lastly, right? The young adult vote wants to see the real you. I don't know if y'all knew that, right? They want to see and hear some real authentic answers. So I have a fun question for everybody. I hope everybody can be fun with me while we wrap this up. Okay. So I'm actually going to split it up. I got 2 questions. I'm going to just split it up. So I'm just going to ask 2 people one question, 2 people the other question. All right. So I'm going to start with Reverend Morrison and Dr. Mapson. Okay. You ready? If you could be any animal, which animal would you be and why? Let's start with Reverend Morrison and then Dr. Mapson. If you could be any animal, which animal would you be and why?
Although the Bible says, consider the ant or consider her ways and be wise, I would say I'd be the elephant. The elephant is probably the most majestic, one of the most majestic animals there ever is, and one of the largest. And seeing that I'm not usually the largest person in the room, I think I'd come back and try to be the elephant, which I could kind of push my weight around a little bit more.
Gotcha. Dr. Mapson?
So I would be a duck.
Okay.
And for 2 reasons. One, I cannot swim. My mother did put me in swimming lessons, but I quit when the man told me to jump in the 10 feet. And I was like, no. And secondly, because now I know it's weird and I grew up in Atlanta, but my grandmother gave me a pet duck for Easter one year. And you could hold him in one hand. And so that's why I would want to be a duck. Swim, and because that was my first official pet.
Okay, those are interesting. All right, here's another fun one. Dr. Powell and then Reverend Harris, okay? If you had to choose, would you rather walk in the rain with no umbrella or drive in the snow? Why or why not? I'll start with Dr. Powell. If you have to choose one, so you can't tell me I'll pick the sunshine, okay? You have to pick one. Would you rather walk in the rain or drive in the snow?
Well, I'd rather walk in the rain.
Okay, and why?
Being a son of blood and thunder myself, I know what it's like to be reared and raised and somewhat founded in the rain. But the good thing about it is Jesus walked on water too. And if I find myself in the rain, at least I know I can stand because I'm with him.
All right. And Reverend Harris, if you had to choose walk in the rain or drive in the snow?
Well, I'm from Brooklyn and I can handle snow. I would rather drive in the snow. And I'll tell you why. I can go at my own pace. I can go forward a little bit, and if it's not moving, I back up and go back a little and go forward a little. And I keep doing that, I'll get where I need to go. So I would rather drive in the snow.
Well, thank you. Thank y'all all so much for that. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for being a part of this. And I do want to say I pass it on now to Reverend Dion.
I'm back. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. X. I want to also just thank everyone for joining us tonight. Your answers were really giving us a great insight on who you are as candidates. Like Dr. X stated, we want to get to know you as candidates. So we really appreciate you all being so truthful and so open with us. So again, I want to say thank you all. Again, thank you to Dr. X for moderating this for us. I want to bring to the screen our next form of debate forms for our candidates. So if our behind the scenes can bring up our next candidates forum. Yes, we have 5 people joining us on April the 16th at 7 p.m. So please mark your calendars and join us on April the 16th, again at 7 p.m. We'll have Dr. Anthony Witherspoon, Dr. Paul Murphy, Dr. Bernardo Nganza, Dr. Gary Adams, and Dr. Victor Wilson. So again, and that will be moderated by the Reverend George William Whitfield. So again, join us on April the 16th at 7 p.m. Please share this. We want to make sure that we are getting everything out there to the young adults and to everyone in Zion. So please share it and just join us again on April the 16th. Thanks, guys. We will let you go, and we will see you on April the 16th. Thanks.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.